Story 1. I've always had a contentious relationship with my parents. I was adopted at a young age, but old enough to remember a time before them. I've done my best to make peace with the mistakes they've made and the mistakes I made when I was younger, but I've found myself loving them from a distance over the past decade. A few incidents stand out as being particularly damaging, and looking back on it now, I've never truly forgiven them for it. There was a time when I was younger when I did an extensive amount of journaling. I'd always loved writing and recording my thoughts throughout the day. It's a practice I feel should be more widespread. Our own words are a living time capsule of times that will soon fade from memory. When I got older, my parents bought me my first computer. I had taken to using Word to journal, and being a moody teenage boy, I would often write about my various arguments and struggles with my parents. In one particular entry, I had written something of the effect of, "My father always thinks he knows best for me," in a snarky and unflattering way. I was under the impression no one had access to these but me. I was wrong. Only a few days later, my mother aggressively pulls me aside at home and begins to berate me about my journal, mocking me and yelling at me for daring to question my father's authority. I couldn't say anything at the moment. I was mortified that my mother had so ruthlessly invaded my privacy like that. There were so many things I wanted to say, but I just froze and took her vicious verbal abuse. I never journaled as I had done before ever again. I've tried to take it up again, but even writing my words in notebooks makes me too paranoid. I couldn't trust my parents to respect me or my privacy for years after this. I frequently deleted my browser history and recycling bin, even long after I had gotten computers of my own that they had no access to. There were other incidents like this, including a time when my mother violently smacked a drink I was holding and splashed it all over my brother, then blamed me for it, saying later it was disrespectful to drink while she was scolding me. I've made a plethora of excuses for them over the years, my mother more so than my dad. It's so frustrating because I do love them and respect them so much for taking me and making me feel like their own. They eventually had my younger brother naturally, and they've always credited that to the joy I brought them by completing their family. I wish it didn't have to be so complicated, and I do want to see them more. They just make it so hard to look past certain behaviors. I've thought about going no contact for a while just so I can process how I really feel. Writing this post has already done a great deal for me, and I hope maybe soon I'll have some clarity. Take care, everyone, and be kind to yourselves. You deserve to be happy, never forget that. Edit. Wow, I honestly wasn't expecting this level of support. Thank you all so much for the karma, awards, comments, and support. I've been so conflicted over my parents the past few years, and many of you are opening my eyes for the first time to the abuse I experienced as a kid. I have decided to go low contact and seek out professional help. Maybe someday we can reach a good place again. I've spent far too much time making excuses and not giving myself the self-respect I deserve. Also, my boyfriend now thinks you are all wonderful people for sticking up for him, and he said he'll support me no matter what. Story 2. I take commissions to make cosplay. I'm also a member of a number of cosplay clubs. One of these clubs in particular is known for being pretty strict and difficult to be accepted into. So this girl commissions me to make her a specific costume so she can become a member of the club that I am already a member of. We'll call her Lily. She and I message back and forth and work out all the details of the commission. She is to pay me $X for the labor of making the costume, and is also to reimburse me whatever amount I pay for materials. I am to provide her copies of receipts, so she knows I'm not scamming her out of extra money. She sends me the list of requirements the costume has to meet for her to be accepted into the club. Like, this is the whole reason she's asking me to make her this costume, so she can become a member of this club. So I get to work. The costume she wants is one I've never done before, so I talk with the club judge who has to approve it to make sure I'm doing it right. I made a mistake along the way and fixed it at no additional charge. Double-checked with the judge to be sure it's right, then sent her photos of the completed outfit. It's all done, and I just need her to pay me before I ship the whole thing to her. Lily is unhappy with the photos. She nitpicks the costume and questions some details. I show her on the list of requirements, which she sent to me, where these details are specified. Since that tactic got her nowhere, she then tries to claim to be allergic to the fabric I made it out of. I point out where the fabric is also specified by the requirements, and ask why she didn't tell me about her allergy before I made it. She never comments on this supposed allergy again, instead moving on to complain about the cost of materials that I expect her to pay back. She accuses me of buying the most expensive materials around. Not true. I had gotten the less pricey polyester version of the fabric instead of the nicer wool version for that very reason. I answer each and every complaint she has reasonably and calmly. Finally, she gives up, makes one last comment which is vague, but also seems to be tentatively, grudgingly, agreeing with me, and goes silent. Some time passes. I still have her costume. I haven't shipped it to her yet because she hasn't ever paid me, so I poke at her. Now she's outright hostile. Everything is wrong and terrible, and I'm a con artist, and she hates my guts. She won't pay for her commission because she says I've done it wrong. She says it won't pass approval. I offer to open a chat between her, me, and the judge who has to approve the costume, the same one I'd already consulted earlier, to reassure her that the costume isn't wrong and will pass approval. She won't do it. She insults me some more, so I give up and exit out of the chat. Alright, that was really long. You guys are still with me? Here's the payback. I contacted the leader of the club and told him what was going on. I asked him if I could post a warning so that other club members would know what Lily was doing. I'm far from the only person who does commissions, and I wanted to warn others so if Lily tried to commission them, they would know to either not accept it or to make her pay up front before they started. That was really all I was after. The club leader told me he'd look into the matter, and he immediately discovered some things that I had no clue about. I wasn't the only club member that Lily was taking advantage of. She had bought the parts for another costume and was trying to strong-arm 2 other members into putting those together for her, for free. The members had volunteered to help teach her how to do it herself, but she continually pressured them until one of them was just doing it for her. This member was unhappy and uncomfortable with the situation, so the club leader decided to just ban her. Lily will never be accepted into the club now. Lily's raging Facebook tantrum that followed once she heard she'd been banned was delicious, as were the drinks me and the other members had that week while we complained to each other about Lily, and how glad we were that we'd never have to deal with her again. Story 3. This happened yesterday evening as I was shopping for wine at the local liquor store, and it's still very fresh in my mind, though I think I may have left out some of the swearing. For a little background, I'm not young anymore. My beard and I know what I'm doing here demeanor often lead to people asking me for help, directions, or whatever, almost regardless of where I happen to be. It happens to me at the liquor store more than anywhere else, but usually only when I am there helping my mom or dad shop for wine. This particular day, I was on my own, shopping only for myself, and since I didn't need to talk to anyone, I was wearing my headphones. I normally wear my headphones because I am autistic, and noise can really bother me at times. They're big, bulky earphones that cover my whole ear and have very good noise canceling. The model is Bowers & Wilkins P9 Signature Premium. If anyone is curious, not cheap, but I consider them worth every penny. Normally, when I wear my headphones, no one bothers me. People see that I can't hear them and just leave me be, so I generally expect that no one will be trying to talk to me and assume that people talking near me are talking to someone else. All that said, I noticed this woman walking around the store with a sour look on her face. I want to talk to your manager, hair done in atomic blonde. We'll call her Atomic Karen. I noticed her looking at some cheap white wine as I was grabbing a couple of bottles of barrel-aged Chardonnay, a really nice bottle for not too expensive, for anyone who likes cool climate whites. I don't hear much through my headphones, but I caught a bit of a Karen call as I passed her. I shot her a raised eyebrow look as I kept walking. Acknowledging her at all may have been a mistake. I wasn't really paying her attention, but I was aware she was in my space, so I moved along a little faster, thinking I was just in her way. I heard a faint "hey" again, the call of a wild Karen. Again, I ignored her as I moved over to the section where they keep the general list of sparkling wines and grabbed a couple of bottles of cava. Just as I was putting the bottles in my cart, I suddenly became aware that someone was way too close to me. Suddenly, my old-school rap music was replaced by the din of the store as my headphones went careening off my head onto the ground. I wheeled around, having been fully absorbed by my decision of whether I wanted actual champagne or just some cava for an upcoming family event. But now, this interaction was already turned up to 11. My headphones clattered across the ground, making a loud smashing noise on impact, and the battery had flown out. My ears were ringing from the impact. Karen was already laying into me. "Idiot. That serves you right for ignoring customers. You need to stop ignoring me and help me right now." "Me? What?" "You heard me, idiot. Help me now." "Whoa, calm down. Why are you yelling? Why did you hit me?" "You deserved it. You were ignoring me." "Lady, I don't work here." "Yes, you do. Now come help me before I get you fired. Where's your manager? I want to speak to him about your incompetence. You can't treat me this way. Do you know who I am?" At this point, a crowd had gathered, including some employees and a pair of police officers. If you're wondering how the police got there so fast, they were already outside the door, getting some homeless people to move along since they had been hanging out in front of the doors begging for change. I had walked past them on my way in. They came inside to investigate Karen's screeching. It was at this point that the initial shock of being hit in the head for literally no reason started to wear off, and I suddenly realized my headphones might be broken. They're a beefy design, cast aluminum and leather, but still a delicate set of electronics. I started looking around the ground for the pieces that were no longer attached to me by the cord. Apparently, this was a huge insult to Karen because she slapped me and shouted, "Pay attention when I talk to you. You want another one." She raised her hand to strike me again, but was surprised by a firm hand on her wrist. Her rage was about to be turned on whoever had grabbed her. "Don't you dare touch me, you little troublemaker. Who do you think you, eh?" She raised her other arm to hit her assailant, but realized who was holding her arm. "Police officer. Ma'am, I'm Officer X. You are under arrest for assault and disorderly conduct. Unless you want to add resisting arrest, I suggest you cease your tantrum and come with me." This quieted her immediately. Her tone went from angry and demanding to contrite and almost mewling. "Oh no, you see, this man assaulted me. He tried to sexually assault me." "Police officer. We'll see what happened when we check the security footage, ma'am. But as of this moment, you are under arrest. Now, are we going to have a problem here?" She went with the police and was put in the back of the cruiser, while the other officer took my statement. I was calm, surprisingly calm, all things considered, or at least not combative, so I wasn't placed in cuffs. After checking the security footage, it was clear that she had assaulted me for no discernible reason. Unfortunately, my headphones were indeed damaged, and the part that holds the batteries was nowhere to be found. So, as it turned out, the story wasn't over. I was told I could sue her for the value of the headphones if she wasn't willing to pay for them. When I spoke to her, sullenly sitting cuffed in the squad car, it went roughly like this. Me. "Lady, you broke my headphones and a piece is missing. You're going to have to replace them." Karen. "Whatever. How much do your headphones cost anyway?" Me. "They're $1,000 plus tax." Karen. "What? You're crazy? I'm not paying for that. Forget you." So that's it for today. I'm suing the lady for replacement headphones in small claims court. The officer told me that with the police report to back up my claim, it's pretty much guaranteed that she'll have to pay in the end. For now, I'm waiting on the headphones, and it may take a year or more before the court date. I don't know exactly when it will be, but I am for sure not letting this go. In the meantime, Karen is being charged with felony assault and disorderly conduct. The police said I probably won't have to testify against her, As with the video evidence, she'll probably just plead guilty. Story 4. So for a little context. I guess I have that "this person has answers" kind of face or something, because people seem to ask me for help all the time, even when it's clearly not anyone's job. If there is a big crowd of people and the person needs directions, they will pick me out of all the options. I don't know if it's my beard that makes people think I know things or what. Also, I am a sommelier, now retired. That's a wine expert. Run wine tastings, purchase wine for restaurants, write descriptions of wine, that sort of thing. Once a month or so, my mom or dad asks me to go with them to help them choose wine. They like to drink, maybe a bottle every other day or so. Anyways, I am happy to go with them and help them choose wine, just a nice excuse to spend time with them. I usually cook them dinner once a week as well. So I am at the liquor store with my mom, not wearing anything that looks like a uniform. They wear black pants, white shirts, and a name tag. I have on white pants, a red sweater, and a dark navy cashmere car coat. We have only been there a few minutes, but the good Ontario whites are right near the door, so we already have a dozen selections in the cart. I'm talking with my mom about the traditional cava method and why it's got that biscuit note she likes from champagne, even though it's a cava. The first confused lady comes up and asks me where the Californian wine is. I point her in the right direction and mention there is a nice Mendoza Malbec on sale that she might like as well, if she likes the style of Californian wine. She is happy with that and goes to find some wine. Confused lady number 2 finds me as I am helping my mom angle the cart towards the elevator to go downstairs. Vintages is downstairs, though there are lots of nice regular list whites. For the most part, I like to spend a little more on reds. Confused lady comes up to me and asks where a particular wine is, that she enjoyed it before. I tell her that I don't think they have any more at this location. I was just by where it would be. Maybe ask the customer service desk. They should be able to order it for you if it's in stock anywhere. Customer service is like 10 steps away from her. I point to them. She seems okay with this and goes over to customer service. Confused lady 3 finds me in the Italian wine section, talking to my mom about 3 different Barolos, all within $5 of each other. Trying to help her decide, she asks me what kind of wine goes well with steak. After asking her price range, I grabbed her a Primitivo that was literally already within reach. It's on the low side of her budget and based on what she said she likes. She'll love that. Confused lady 4 takes the cake. I'm walking with my mom to the checkout. Our cart is full, and we're talking about the steak dinner I am going to make for my birthday, which is coming up. My little brother is coming down from the other city where he lives too. The lady hits me with a loud "excuse me." I turned and noticed her. I heard her making coughing noises, but I thought she was just sick or something. She looks angry. Angry lady, are you done? I need you to come help me get a bottle down. She points up at some vintage champagne that is behind glass. Me, oh, I'm sorry, I can't get that for you. I don't work here. There should be employees at the cash just over here though. She is visibly getting angrier now. At this point, she's yelling and an actual employee in the uniform has come to investigate. They are watching as angry lady yells at me. Don't give me that nonsense. I just saw you help someone else. I know you work here. Even as she is yelling, I continue towards the cashier. Me. Sorry, I really don't work here. I really can't get anything down for you from behind the glass. I'm sure we can find an employee for you. Here, look. That gentleman is a manager, and those are employees. I point out the small crowd of employees who have gathered due to her shouting. My mom and I are now almost at the cash. The lady is still following us, yelling that I should help her because she knows I work here. The manager asks her what the problem is, and she turns on him shouting that I won't help her and is pretending I don't work there. She is now red in the face and clearly furious. At this point, I am unloading the cart onto the scanning area, so the cashier can scan me through. Although he tells her I don't work there, she insists she knows I do work there. By the time I was done, and we had paid and were heading back to the elevator to head back upstairs and leave, The lady was shrieking that no one can treat her this way. I see security has started approaching her. I found out later that she was ejected and banned from the store because she kept screaming and knocked down some expensive liquor during her tantrum. Story 5. This week was our middle school reunion. Most of us went to the same K-8 school, ages 6-14 for our friends across the pond. And while we all were laughing and talking over Zoom, my friend, whom I'll call Janice, brought up this memory. At our schools, with the exception of kindergarten, 2 grades would be paired together. So 1st and 2nd grades would be taught together, 3rd and 4th would be taught together, so on and so forth. The 7th and 8th grades had to do a special project every year called Toy Team. Basically, we would be put into teams, build a specific toy that we could market. Representatives from local businesses would be invited to judge our projects and win awards in various categories: best presentation, best design, best research, etc. The idea behind this project was to teach teamwork, ingenuity, creativity, etc. But in the end, it caused more trouble than it was worth, for reasons I'll get to in a moment. I hated Toy Team with a passion. The biggest reason being that the boys would take over the building of the toy and the girls did the secretarial work, listing results, surveying the groups, writing final reports, etc. It wasn't fair, but I was always too afraid to speak my mind and ask to help building, something I've always enjoyed. But 8th grade year was the one that almost broke me because of one kid. Enter Carlos, not his real name. Carlos was in 7th grade, but was touted as a math and science genius. He had to go to the local high school to take math-science classes, because none of the teachers at our school were qualified to teach at his level. He also prided himself on being a cool kid and had a gang of sycophants follow him around, reaffirming his greatness. In reality, Carlos was a little punk who honestly should have used a lesson or two in the school of hard knocks. He was a jerk to the highest degree, always looked down on everyone else, and since his parents, who were honestly Lucius and Narcissa Malfoy come to life, defended his actions and threatened everyone around them. Because it was a private school and Carlos' parents were big donors, even the teachers were limited in what they could and couldn't do to discipline him. The worst they could do was detention, but he just shrugged it off. Seriously, unless he killed somebody, Carlos was untouchable. Janice and I were thrilled to be in the same group, until we learned we'd be paired with Carlos. Carlos immediately took over the project and bossed Janice and me around. Janice and I were favorite targets for Carlos and his sycophants because we were quiet, kept to ourselves, and just focused on our work. Carlos proceeded to make our experience in Toy Team miserable. He claimed that because he was the big math and science expert, only he could build our glider, and we had to write it down. Janice and I put up with it at first because we knew our teachers would do nothing, and it was just an 8-week-long group project. Then one day, during week 6, it happened. We had to test the gliders. Our testing rig was set up with yardsticks and rubber bands on tables. You'd load the gliders into the rubber bands, pull them back, and launch. Then you'd measure how far they flew and make your corrections. Once again, the boys took over and the girls did the recording. Janice and I were making notes when I noticed the rubber band was about to snap due to how stretched out it was. I warned Carlos about the rubber band and to adjust the glider. When he protested, our teacher, who I'll call Mrs. Adams, snapped at him and told him, "Listen to your partners and adjust." Well, Carlos did as said, but he pulled back the glider back too far and too fast. As a result, the rubber band snapped. The rubber band not only slapped Carlos in the face, but broke our glider to pieces because he pulled it back too far and the force hit the fragile wood. Carlos was pissed and turned his anger on me. "No wonder you suck at math and science," he said. This, in addition to all the stuff going on, broke me. It's true that math and science were my worst subjects, because I have a learning disability that makes those subjects tough. But I've always loved building and repairing things. My dad is an engineer, and some of my earliest memories were of him teaching me how to fix my toys and encouraging me to experiment with different building things. In addition, I was a total daddy's girl. I wanted to make him proud, and I knew that me being bad at math and science was something that stressed him out. So, I'm not joking, I ran away, like in those cliché 90s movies. My house was 2 blocks away, and I ran there. Fortunately, my teachers knew that there weren't many places I could have gone and called my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom, to tell her what happened and to please return me to school. What I didn't know was that Dad was working home that day. When I ran in, crying and upset, he noticed and went after me. He calmed me down and asked what happened. I told him everything, about Carlos taking over, about how Janice and I were doing all the hard work and Carlos being a nasty bully, the rubber bands snapping and me getting blamed. Dad was quietly hugging me, kissing my forehead. When Dad is quiet, that usually means he is angry. When I looked up, I saw that his mouth was set in a hard line and his eyes were dark. I was scared he was angry at me. I begged him to not be mad at Janice or me because it wasn't our fault. Dad instead reassured me that he wasn't mad at Janice or me. He was mad at Carlos and had an idea to teach that little punk a lesson. Dad then called the school, reassured Mrs. Adams that I was okay and that I would spend the rest of the day at home. He also sent an email to not only Mrs. Adams but Janice's parents detailing this plan of his. Janice's parents and Mrs. Adams were game. After we heard it, Janice and I were smiling ear to ear, even though we knew we had to put in the work all by ourselves. The next day, Mrs. Adams pulled Carlos, Janice, and me aside and said, thanks to the glider incident, Carlos was now on his own and had to finish the project by himself. Janice and I would be doing our own project. Carlos was pretty happy about this, because those two slowed me down. However, what Carlos was not thinking about was that since Janice and I were doing all the paperwork, we had all the information. We offered to share our notes with him in an attempt to be fair, but he said, it's all in my head and I don't need it to slow me down. In fact, I bet I can do it even better. We all had to sign a contract that information was not exchanged and witnessed by Mrs. Adams. The next 2 weeks were easily the best of toy tea for Janice and me. Since we had all of the notes, we were able to rebuild the glider in less than a week. Our dads even set up a makeshift glider range for us to test, and we spent an entire Saturday flying the gliders, one in red, the other in blue, which were the most popular colors according to our surveys. As a result, we improved our glider and even made a game out of it, racing them. When Janice's dad mentioned the red and blue gliders reminded him of the Gemini dueling coaster at Cedar Point, we decided to name the toys after the coaster and make them a 2-for-1. We built the box for our gliders, got our calculations double-checked by not only Mrs. Adams but 2 independent adults as well. Both dads, who were co-workers, signed off on the math, even adding their proof of work and signing the back. This is important for later, a presentation board with an overview and along with a huge binder showing all of our work. Janice and I worked really hard on this project and it felt awesome. On our last day, we had a pizza party and sleepover, making bets on what Carlos' reaction was most likely going to be. Presentation day arrived. This was one of the few days we could wear something else other than our school uniform, so we were dressed in nice outfits to make our presentations. Janice and I stood together with our gliders and had big smiles on our faces. We looked at Carlos, who had an actual nice-looking glider, box, presentation board, paperwork, and everything. However, he had an anxious look on his face instead of his usual arrogant one, which made me happier. Presentation day worked like this. The first half of the day would be the representatives walking around and judging who had the best-looking gliders, boxes, presentation boards, binders, etc. Then we'd have lunch and come back. The ones who had been selected for the second round would then make their presentations to not only the representatives, but the entire class. Janice and I answered the questions asked by the representatives. We arrived with confident and clear answers. One of the businesses that attended was the engineering firm that our dads worked for. They were impressed with our presentation and selected us for the second round. Carlos was also selected, and he had a worrisome look on his face when the bell rang. After lunch, we returned, and something about the way the binder was sitting made me double-check. Wouldn't you know it, the pages with double-checked calculations and proof of work were gone. Carlos, being the jerk he was, didn't keep notes about his experiments, so he decided to steal our work and present it as his own. Janice and I decided to take a professional approach in order to grind Carlos further into the dirt. I went up to Mrs. Adams and the representatives and asked them if they had gone through our binder when we were gone, because the calculations and proof of work pages were missing. Mrs. Adams was immediately suspicious as well, given Carlos' behavior, and immediately walked over, took his binder off the table, flipped through it, and found the corrections page. He had hastily scrawled in his name at the top next to ours, so it looked like he was involved. Mrs. Adams looked at him and said, "Carlos, why did you take the pages?" Carlos said, "They gave their work to me, remember?" Fortunately, Janice and I included our copy of the signed contract from earlier, saying Carlos had refused use of our information in our binder and pulled it out. At this point, Carlos looked like the kid who denied he had been eating cookies, even though he had a ring of crumbs around his lips. "Well, they stole my double-checked work. See." He shows the proof of work our dads had done. I took it out and put it back. Then Janice looked at one of the men, who I learned later was the supervisor of the team both of our dads were a part of, and said, "Mr. Lionel, could you please check his proof of work? Our dad signed the back of ours." Mr. Lionel agreed and flipped the page over. Carlos didn't notice that our dads had signed the back of the proof of work and included their names. Mr. Lionel nodded. "I know those signatures anywhere," he said before looking at Carlos with a glare that could wilt a flower. "You told me you wanted to be an engineer someday, right?" Carlos could only nod, his face white. "You are aware that engineers take theft of others' work seriously." Again, Carlos nodded. "And that if you were doing this in a professional setting, you'd not only be fired from the company, but blackballed from the industry?" Mr. Lionel said, staring down at this kid. Carlos looked like a melted snowman, and that he wanted to disappear into the ground. I learned later that Mr. Lionel was a nice man, but man, I could immediately see why our dads respected him in that moment. Mr. Lionel turned to Mrs. Adams. "I recommend that he be disqualified from the next round and be made to apologize to these two girls in addition to returning the proofs to them." Carlos did return the paper and apologized for the theft, not looking me in the eye. As a result, not only was Carlos disqualified, but because he cheated, he flunked the project as a whole. Since Toy Team was at least 30% of our science grade, he ended up getting his first D on his report card, which his parents had a freaking field day with until Mr. Lionel sent them a letter, telling them what their son had done and that if he didn't shape up, he risked real trouble in his professional life. Janice and I ultimately won Best Design, but the best award was seeing Carlos' ego get knocked down several pegs. He was still a jerk, but was scared of us. Hey, I might be bad at math and science, but at least I know not to be mean to people who might help me someday.